Welcome to the Granite Zero podcast. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to come on and have a chat with you.
Well, I've seen you sort of doing the rounds. Like there's you keep popping up on my Instagram, and I was like, "What's this book?" And I keep seeing Beyond the Drop Zone. And
Who's this bald bloke?
I was like, what is this? And I think it's one of my other guests, um, the, the Chinook chick. I think she shared a lot about you, and I think were you on the H Hour podcast as well?
Yes, yeah. I think that was the first one I did.
Yeah, but she
Yeah,
either shared that one or there was another. It might have been was it Forces FM or whatever it is?
yeah,
Big
yeah.
Phil. She might have
Big.
shared a couple of them, and I was like, well, he's an interesting guy, and he's got no hair, so let's get him on.
Do you know what, mate? When I left the army, I always said I was going to grow my hair really long, have a big beard, go for that, surfer look.
Yeah,
And as luck would have it, as soon as I left, it started falling out. So I've just embraced it now. I've just gone with it.
it's the stress, mate. Stress of leaving.
It is
I
absolutely.
would say I was similar. I never wanted long hair. I've always wanted a fucking beard, but fucking God's will, it doesn't grow right. I've got bits missing. It's really fucking ginger as well, which is not ideal. It gets to a certain length, and then it's like, nah, I'm just gonna stop now, and you're just gonna look like a homeless hobo. But
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same, mate. I'm a closet ginger when I grow my beard. It's the Celtic in me.
yeah,
But
same, same.
Liz, absolute star, mate. She's helped me out enormously when I first decided to publish the book and kind of
Yeah,
put the story out there. Because, well, you'll know yourself, mate. There's obviously a degree of vulnerability to it.
Mm.
You don't know what the response is going to be, what the
It's
feedback's going to
it's a
be like.
weird feeling, isn't it? Because you put your heart and soul into something, and
Yeah,
then you're like, what? It's not so much what if someone doesn't like it. It's what happens if like they start taking the piss or because I had it with with the podcast, and then when I wrote my um mixed reviewed book, which I've mentioned enough times on here, like it generally was mixed reviews, but with the podcast, I had a lot of hate come at me from lads that were still serving who I thought were mates.
really.
Um, and I was like, I'm trying to show people that it's okay to have depression and all these other mental health issues, and in theory, you guys are making it worse. I thought you were my mates. But yeah, I know exactly how you felt with that anxiety of releasing something because not you're proud of yourself because you like I've done it, and then it's like it's that what if.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tommy, what you're doing is really important, and all the other platforms that are out there. The more the better, really, because um, I know certainly when I was in, it weren't really a thing.
Yeah,
Podcasts
yeah.
and open discussions, and that's all I listen to now. At every spare moment, I'll stick a podcast on, and I think there's comfort in listening to someone with a shared experience
Yeah.
or with a similar background. And but I think like the narrative around mental health, it's definitely going in the right direction. It hasn't always been that way, as you all know, but it needs to change. It shouldn't be viewed as being vulnerable shouldn't be viewed as a weakness,
Yeah.
especially in an infantry unit. It should be a strength. It should be viewed as a strength and
Mm.
something to learn from.
Well, it,
So,
it shows that you're in touch with yourself. I think
yeah, yeah, yeah,
if you can recognize that I've just been through whatever trauma, whether it's you're part of the parachute regiment or the humble RAF regiment. A lot of people say, "Oh, for me, from my example, oh, you served in the RAF Reg. How the fuck can you have PTSD and depression and things like that?" It's like, well, hang on a minute. I still, contrary to belief, I still went outside the wire, and every day was a potential day that I could not come home, or I could be shot at, or I could be blown up, or etc. etc. So
Yeah.
you're dealing with those. The constant state of readiness is what we're always sort of taught, and even from basic training, you're taught to be. You need to be ready at any moment. You need to be able to switch it from casual chat to kill, kill, kill.
Yeah.
And again, contrary to belief, that happens in the RAF Reg because we are infantry. I know that will piss off a lot of people, um, but for
No, mate.
me, when I came back from tours, when I eventually left, there was no phase where I went from squaddy to civvy, and it was an easy sort of transition. And having that state of alertness and readiness is not good. And then at that time, and I'm sure you'll agree, it was frowned upon if you started having a bit of a fucking problem with your head. You're like, fuck it, I'm not feeling myself. It's like, oh, fucking man up,
Yeah.
get on with it. Yeah, but
Yeah. I hate that scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if I can see in myself, oh, I'm not feeling great, I'm not feeling good. I've already recognised, and I can self heal and talk to your oppo and go, mate, I'm fucking shit state here. You're right. Yeah, I might need a condor moment to get fucking switched back on.
Yeah.
But you have what is it? A trim practitioner or whatever it was. Fuck it. That was useless. It was like, you're right. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crack on then. Get back out there. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely a strength to be able to recognise it because you can build and grow from it.
100%, mate. 100%. Yeah, you talking about the trim process there. You will be able to relate to this, but I remember coming back from HR4 into Cyprus for 24 hours decompression, and the trim briefing was, it probably lasted less than 15 minutes, and everyone was inside a tent.
Yeah.
Everyone was itching to get on the piss, and the discussion was pretty much, if you've got any issues, we'll signpost you in this direction, right? Go and get lashed. And it was poor. I think back then. It's much better
Yeah.
now. I believe.
You are right. It is poor. I think. I found when we got back, whether it was Iraq or Afghan, we would do that day of decompression. We'd get home, and then it'd be like, right, we'll see you in 10 days or whatever it was. You're stood down for 10 days. It's like you
Yeah.
probably want to keep the lads in for 10 days and then stand them down, just so that just not normalization, you could say, just getting them back into society, because we've just been, as I said, in a state of ready and alert for anything. Well, my first two tours are about 4.5 months, I think, from
Yeah.
4.5 months upwards, and some lads did or signed on to do extra. I know a lad that constantly wanted to be out there, and he was like, well, that's not normal in itself. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, just stand them down, get them into regular routine, and then go, right, now you got 10 days off. I
Yeah.
said it on I think a couple of podcasts ago, and my brother found it hilarious. He went, that's probably something that I would do now anyway. I remember I got home and my missus was at work. My brother-in-laws were at school at the time because that's how fucking long ago it was. They were at school. My mother and father-in-law, they were off at work as well. So I was like sat in the house. I was like, what am I going to do? I literally went down the shop, bought a crate of beer, and got pissed watching the Ashes in the house on my own, just getting fucking lashed up. And then my missus would come home. What have you done all day? Oh, I'm steaming. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a recipe for disaster, mate, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Like you said about the being in a constant state of readiness, that hyper arousal or hyper vigilance. I've researched it and I've studied it, and physiologically, it does things to your body because there's there's hormones and endorphins racing around your body on a regular basis. I know certainly when I came back, I was in a constant state of hyper arousal, and it's not normal. It's a normal reaction to coming out of a high pressure,
Yeah.
um, not normal environment.
Yeah, because it's
So
not. And they wonder why when the lads go out on the piss, they just fucking want to fight everything.
yeah,
It
yeah.
could be the
A mate of
smallest thing,
mine,
but as you said, you're already in that sort of state anyway. You're not really decompressed properly. You've gone out on the piss. Some bloke knocks into you. You think, who the fuck's this guy? Does he not know?
yeah,
That old fucking saying, does he not know who I am? Well, obviously he doesn't know who you are. Didn't mean it.
yeah,
And the next
yeah.
thing you know, you're fucking
Yeah.
scrapping.
Yeah, well, that's what you train to do, aren't you? You
Yeah.
train to back down and take the fight to the enemy. A really good friend of mine, he went through a horrible time. He used the analogy of, well, he said it was like putting a hand grenade on the high street.
Mm.
Coming back from tour, and then within the space of a couple of days, you're then pushing a shopping trolley around the supermarket, or you're in a bar. It's just I think it's a good way of putting it. It's like putting a hand grenade on the high
Yeah.
street.
Well, I had this was a few years after I left. It would have been about 4 years after I left, I think. I remember I got into the security industry. I did my CP course and everything, alley like that, and then I never actually used it. But it's really good on your CV, especially if you want to get a security job. 'Cause I
Yeah,
needed
they're not
something a bit
cheap
more.
either.
I needed something a bit more secure. So as much as I would love to go out and continue doing that side of stuff, but anyway, I digress. I remember I was literally doing. It's on the site that I'm on now, but I'm part of the management team now. And my then boss was like, Tommo, you need to go and move those trolleys from the car parks back to Asda. And I remember I loaded them all up, and I went, I've gone from being a soldier fighting on different front lines, and now I've just been told to collect some fucking trolleys. And that's another part of the phase where I already had little inklings that I wasn't fucking right in the noggin. But that
Yeah,
moment, I was like, "Oh, I've lost those 5.5 years that I did.
yeah,
Literally mean nothing to these people." And then I got in my head, "You're nothing," and then that just kept going through my head over and over again. You're nothing. Who gives a
yeah,
shit about you? And then it was your daughters would be better off without you. Your wife
yeah,
would be better off without you. You're shit. Oh, it's fucking dangerous.
yeah. It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because what you did in those 5.5 years is a huge. It'll always be a huge part of
Mm.
your identity. And
It still is, man. Yeah.
I always say, I was, a para for my sins, but it doesn't define. It was a huge part of my identity, and it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't define me as a person, and it really sort of, especially the lads that join so early, you still don't really know who you are. You're told who you need to be and how you need to
Yeah.
act and
Yeah.
what you need to wear and how you need to talk. And then all of a sudden,
You're
you're
calling everyone a
nobody on
hat.
Sing Street. You can, yeah,
Which
yeah,
I used to use the term hack because I knew it'd piss off some of the lads from Two Squadron and then some of the lads with wings on in the regiment. It's like,
oh yeah,
why do you keep calling everyone a hat? I went, because it's a brilliant fucking insult. Go, and they're like, yeah, but nobody knows what you're talking about. Shut up, your hat. Just fucking. I had a few para
yeah.
mates that I would call hats, and they're like, "You're not allowed to use that." And I went, "Oh, why not?"
Yeah.
But
When when I was in, I was probably the most airborne person you'd ever meet. But
yeah,
uh, after leaving and doing well over a decade on the circuit, I'm a little bit more reserved and humble now, and I see the bigger picture.
yeah,
But
yeah.
as we all are cat badges. You're brainwashed, aren't you, to an extent?
I very very
Into
similar, but with with the RAF Reg, obviously, because we get all the shit, we get all of it from everyone, apart from actual Air Force, because they try, and you're like, shut up, like just shut up. But because we got so much shit, and you sort of develop a bit of a thick skin, but you can't stop yourself from reacting to the banter, as it were. So you'll be like, "Oh, how dare they say that about the 5 mile of death?" And you find yourself you're constantly arguing with fucking shit cunts on fucking line. And that now I'm just like,
Yeah.
can you just get new banter? How about that? How about you just get? Because that happened in 2007. Come on, guys.
Is
Most
that
of
when
you
that
were.
video
So that
was?
that I'm pretty sure it was 2007 that the 5 mile of death video came out,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then
Still doing the rounds.
yeah, still doing the
Pops
rounds.
up every now and
But again, I've said this a few times on here. Scouse Taylor was a fucking top gunner. Like he served a lot of time with Three Para. He was attached to Three Para for a long time. He was SFSG. He did a lot of shit. And what he was trying to do was rouse the troops that are going into their final exercise to smash their final exercise and then feel a bit of pride.
yeah.
He didn't know he was being filmed, and then someone's obviously put that onto the internet, and then everyone's gone, ha ha, clipped.
Yeah. Well, you'll know yourself. You can't get away with anything.
Nah,
Is good intentions that he would have had. It's the same with anything, isn't it? As soon
oh
as
yeah,
you rise to it, you're just going to get it back even more so. So
yeah. It was a funny thing that I saw online today. You put well, I say today, it would probably been the other day actually. You probably seen it where someone's put a rifles flag on your obstacle course.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, that's top banter. That is. Whoever's done that, well played.
Yeah. They've put the effort in
There's
for
a lot of
for
effort.
I think was it a rifles flag?
Yeah, yeah, rifles
Was
flag.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah, on the
yeah.
Trinidad. Yeah, fair play. Fair play.
So Willow, what age did you actually join up then?
16. I was
Oh,
16
mate,
and
that's
9 months
no age, is it?
today,
That's a couple of years for the Queen, that as well, isn't it?
mate. So I went to the careers office in Rhyl in North Wales, and they were trying to. First of all, they wanted me to go to the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. That was the local,
Yeah,
regiment. But I was adamant what I was going to do. And then because I was 15 at the time, they tried to steer me in the direction of the Army Foundation College,
oh yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
was I was tempted. I was tempted because I was desperate to get out of North Wales, and I just the whatever I could do the soonest. That's what I wanted to do. But then it was a year in college, and then as you know, you then go and do phase two
Yeah.
of your training. So I just sort of said, no, I'll grizz it out and wait until I'm old enough. And I'm sure legally it was 16 and 9 months to
Mm,
the day,
yeah,
and that was my first day at Cattrick as it is now. But yeah, it was I was as the Screws used to say that they've got holes in their t-shirt older than me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in Baghdad when you and your dad's bag was a good fucking.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? Do you know what, mate? I was quite well prepared for it because I lived on my own from quite a young age. I was probably about 14, 15. I lived on my own. So I could already cook for myself. I could admin myself, I could iron my clothes. I was, fit as a butcher's dog. So, and I was desperate to get away from home. So it kind of, it was a fairly smooth transition. I remember there being lads in the platoon, in their mid 20s, which
Mm,
at that age they're grown men and they
yeah,
they really suffered with being away from home. But
yeah.
yeah,
We had a
sort of
few on our course that were very similar. Um, and you find that, to be fair, a few of the lads did actually end up passing out, but there was a few that were a bit older that clearly already had in their own mind that, well, I say in their own mind, they already had their own mind, you could say. So breaking them down and building
yeah,
them back up again was it seemed to be a bit of a struggle. But 16, I mean, you're ready to be molded.
Yeah, yeah, very impressionable.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not, when I think back to how badly I wanted to get my maroon beret, there's not much I wouldn't have done.
Mm.
And do you know what? I probably lost fitness when I first joined because I lived on my own. I didn't really finish school. I didn't finish school, but rather than bunk off and go and smoke weed and cause trouble or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
me and a good mate of mine, he ended up joining the Marines. We used to bunk off school and we used to go and do these like extreme challenges on the North Wales coast. So
Oh, nice.
we'd run like one of them was we'd run 30 miles or we'd go and do burpees in the sea and just the more extreme the better. And running up mountains with like rocks in your backpack,
Yeah.
all the things that you shouldn't really do when you're that age. So yeah, I was fit, and when you get to that point in your training where you can go home, I wasn't really interested in going back home. So I'd either stay in the block or I'd go and to one of the other lads' hometowns in the
Yeah.
platoon for the weekend. And it was great, mate. It was great getting lashed up in Newcastle at 16,
Yeah,
giving it
mate.
Billy big bollocks.
Yeah. As I, that's what I enjoyed a lot was when we're actually allowed to go home on the weekends. For me, I always enjoyed going back home because I'm from Hereford originally, so going home
Oh, right.
and being a trainee squaddy and whatnot, there was plenty of lads out there that you would meet up and go on the piss with, loads
Yeah,
of banter. As I said, I got a number of mates that were paras and marines and things like that. So when they found out I was joining the RAF Reg, they would give me all the shit. Um, but yeah, the opportunity going to places that you potentially would never really visit. Like one of my closest mates is from Leicester, so I went to Leicester one weekend. That was my missus is going to kill me. It's full of fanny, so it's fucking brilliant. But yeah, it was just great, and I joined up when I was 20. I had my 21st birthday out in the field on what is known as Fieldcraft. Was it Fieldcraft 1 or Fieldcraft 2? Can't remember. But I think it might be Fieldcraft 1 actually. So we're still sort of learning how to admin and whatnot in the field. And I
yeah,
remember the DS, our section commanders all found out it was my birthday, so they let me have some of their fish and chips on the Friday, which was fucking awesome. But then we were actually confined to camp. So as soon as we finished, we got back off the training area, and it was right. You guys can't go out because you've been soldiering all fucking week, and now you want to kill
yeah.
everything. So you have to stay in. It's like, oh, brilliant. Cheers for that.
Yeah. Not your normal 21st birthday, is it?
No, I wasn't. But for me, I struggled a lot at the start. You know those opening 4 weeks where you're just learning shit like fucking how to iron and
Yeah,
doing stuff with the PTIs that you're like, why would I be doing this? This is shit. Um, and then you have your family's day. I don't know if you guys had something similar, but you had your family's day. And I remember in the lead up, I remember having a phone call with my dad and my brother. It was probably the longest phone call I've ever had with my dad. And I was like, Dad, I cannot be asked with this. I'm with fucking ironing and all that, all the block admin. I was shit at it. Fucking everybody knows I was shit at it. I was fucking awful. And he was like, stick it out and you'll be all right. And he went, once you get into the field, you'll come into your own. And I was like, yeah, well, I didn't really believe him. And then my section commander, Smudge, came over to me. He went, Tommo, trust me, once we get out in the field properly, you'll be all right. And he was right. As soon as I got out to the field, I was a completely different gunner, you could say, different soldier. I could actually I could actually do it. Apart from fucking read a map. I still fucking struggled with fucking reading a map. But Yeah, it was just the transition from the blue Air Force, you could say, learning all that fucking bullshit to actually doing stuff that we're supposed to be trained to do. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm actually supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
Well, you're that internal dialogue, you can sort yourself out of it, can't you?
Yeah.
Especially if you know that you can go back home and go back to a fairly comfortable way of
Mm.
life, and you know that you can pick up a job or whatever it is. It's
Oh
very
yeah,
easy to sort yourself
definitely.
out of it.
I left my dad and my brother were running a gym at the time, and unfortunately, it fell to the wayside, should we say? But I was comfortable just being a normal personal trainer in the gym,
Yeah.
just doing that. And obviously, as I said before we kicked off, I wanted to be a PTI, but I was thick as shit. So I say I was thick as shit. I think I missed out by like a mark on the aptitude test.
Right.
But I was like, well, no, I'm joining the Air Force. I wanted to join the Air Force since I was about fucking 3 years old. Since I saw my dad jump out of a fucking Chinook in Hereford, I was like,
Pretty alley thing to do, isn't it? You know, it's
oh, it
understandable.
was. It's one of the earliest memories I've got, and it's mad because I don't really remember much else of like being that young. And there's certain
Yeah.
things that always stick in my head. One was a trip to Germany when we went skiing when I was a kid because my old man was this will be a sore subject for my mum. My dad was posted over to Germany but didn't take us with him. Um, we discovered later on in life why, but I won't go into that because my mum does listen. Um, and then eventually he took us out with us on like a holiday, and it was fucking incredible. And I just
Right.
remember going out and we were on a swimming baths or something and rolled around in the snow and then jumped. Anyway, but the other one was we were swear it was the people that are listening to this are going to go, Tommo, nobody knows where the lug flats are unless you're in fucking Hereford. But there's a big open space. And I
Right.
remember we went up in the Chinook. They did a flyby of around Hereford. We then dropped down the families, and we all went and stood and watched the Chinook, and obviously took off again. Did another flyby, and then they all jumped out of the back of it. And then I was like, that's fucking brilliant. I remember standing there with my brother, and the one thing that always sticks in my mind is I stood in fucking cow shit. And I don't know why that stuck in my head, but I definitely stood in cow shit. But yeah, it was just incredible. And I had my old man on the podcast, my episode 100, and I need to get him back on because he's definitely got more stories there. Because
Yeah.
he served 22 years as a PTI stroke PJI, and then he was then attached to 2-2, which is why I'm from Hereford.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Yeah, yeah.
so he's got loads of stories with those fucking boys as well because he was teaching them how to parachute and all sorts. But anyway, we digress. This is not about me and my family. This is about you.
It's no, it's a beautiful part of the country. Not that I ever it was ever bad, but I've spent a lot of time down in Hereford and the surrounding areas. Traffic is a nightmare.
Oh, it's horrible,
But
mate. Still, it
yeah,
hasn't changed.
yeah, yeah,
In 30 years. But for the 30, well, nearly 38 years that I've been in existence, I think I lived in Hereford from when I was 1 year old. And they've always moaned about the traffic and the fact that they need a bypass.
yeah.
Does anyone listen? Do they fuck? So what
Yeah.
was your first tour then? What was that?
Uh, my first tour, so I joined in 01, beginning of 02. Joined in 02. So my first tour was Northern Ireland,
All right.
the back end
Yeah,
of
yeah, the back end of the old
the war.
troubles.
Yeah, yeah. So it was coming to the campaign was coming to a
Mm.
close at that point. But we went out there for the marching season. We went over to West Belfast,
Yeah.
Palace Barracks, and it was only a short tour. I think 4.5 months, something like that. But yeah, we got it. We got into it. It was pretty cheeky at points, in terms
Yeah.
of public order. So a
Especially during
different
that
type.
time. From what I've heard, the marching season is a very strange time. So
Yeah,
to put it
yeah,
into sort of context for me, obviously I've got my charity football team, and we're actually going to Belfast to play the Northern Ireland supporters team for Rock to Recovery. And I spoke to one of my buddies who is from Belfast, and I was like, "Is there any sort of dates that we need to fucking miss?" And he gave us a few dates. He was like,
swerve.
"Do not come out in these dates." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And he went, "It's marching season, and you're a group of fucking ex squaddies that are coming out." And I was like, "Okay, good point. Well presented."
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I've not been back since, and I've got loads of friends out there.
Yeah,
I don't know how I would feel going back all these years later because, like I say, it was just a different type of tour
yeah, yeah,
because you're trolling streets that look, the environment looks the same as the streets where
yeah.
you grew up. The
Yeah.
people
I bet
are
that's
the same.
strange. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's a bit more relatable to an extent. And but I'll be honest, I'd only just turned 18 at the time. I just sort of I didn't really know what I was doing, just following
yeah.
orders, just try not to let the team down and sort of be as professional as you can. But yeah, a good experience, but a different type of combat in terms of it's up close and personal,
Yeah.
with any sort of right training, as
Yeah,
as you'll
and
know, it's in your face.
it's got to be a bit strange as well, because obviously, unless they're wearing fucking balaclavas and what you see on online and in the internet and stuff like that, it's well, you could also relate it similar to when in the desert as well. When you're in these areas, you don't know who you're actually fucking fighting,
No, no, yeah,
which goes back to our original point at the start. You are in that constant state of alert. If as soon as you switch off,
yeah. I remember at that age, I remember having a feeling of it was the first time in my life where I thought there's people outside these barrack walls that if they got their hands on me, they,
yeah,
they would do horrible things. People actively in this area
yeah.
want to snatch you and want to kill you, and it's a weird feeling to come to terms with at that age.
Especially at 18, mate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's history repeats itself, doesn't it?
Yeah,
You,
of
you know,
course.
young soldiers, and what's frightening is I've got my son is 18 now, and I know you got kids yourself. He's still a little boy in my eyes.
Mm,
He drives. He's got a full-time job. He he goes out drinking and all the rest of it, but he's still he's still a little boy in my eyes, and he's 18, and I think Jesus Christ, like I
yeah.
remember, you know, patrolling the streets and getting into proper tear ups.
Yeah,
Lots of seasons at that age, but I didn't feel young at the time. But looking back, I was still very,
yeah. I
very
don't
young.
realize how, because I was 22 when I went to Iraq, and I look back at some of the photos and I'm like, fucking hell.
Yeah, yeah,
Even at 22, I'm still still a boy. And it's like it's a quote from Anthony Swarford from Jarhead, which is one of the books that really
great
resonated with.
film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great film, even better book. It really resonated with me, especially ha his Iraq tour that he it depicts in the movie and in the book, because that was very similar to mine, where we're constantly waiting for something to happen. But
right.
there's a there was a quote in there where the reporter asks him if he's scared, and he goes, "I'm 21 years old and I was dumb enough to sign a contract. I can hear their fucking bombs. Of course, I'm fucking scared." And that always stuck with me,
Yeah,
because I was like, I remember being out there and I was like, I'm 22 years old and I've just been in a fucking rocket attack and I'm fucking shitting my pants. But
Yeah.
as my missus still finds hilarious, after that first rocket attack, the next one is just a rocket attack. It's like, okay, cool. And we move
Yeah.
on. And as she always says, and as my therapist said during my one or two sessions that I did before I thought this is bullshit, I can't be bothered. That's not fucking normal.
Yeah, it's yeah, IDF, obviously for the listeners, indirect fire, mortars, rockets, whatever.
Yeah,
They're it's a shit position to be in because, as you know, there's no there's no amount of soldering that it's just pure luck.
yeah,
If if that bomb's got your name on it, and that's the really frustrating thing. Conventional warfighting, I can get it. It's loud, it's confrontational.
yeah,
You've got a chance. Your soldiering comes into it, but mortars and rockets, mate, it's an horrible feeling.
yeah.
Yeah, really
So
horrible
it's like
feeling.
my missus couldn't come to grips, and even now my two daughters still find it bizarre when because they ask me occasionally what was it like, and we got to the point. It must have been about the second or third where we stopped hitting the deck. If the alarm went off, I'm not hitting the deck. It's like if it comes anyway, I'm dead. So
yeah,
especially in our in Iraq where we received quite a few rocket attacks, and we were in the accommodation block where we had bricks laid up, and then we had a big steel like roof over your bed, and then sandbags and whatnot.
yeah,
And obviously, if you get the IDF alarm go off, you're supposed to put your body armor and helmet on, lie down, put your fucking head down, and all that. 90% of the lads, or probably even 99% of the lads, if we heard that and we were in the room, we would just get into our bed because we thought if it hits the fucking tent, then we're fucked. So might
much
as
you
well,
can do about it anyway.
might as well be fucking comfortable for a minute, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pure luck. And when I like think back of some of the incidents I found myself in, I think I can't have that many chances left.
Yeah,
Where
like a
it's
cat.
yeah, you're talking millimeters. I mean, there was an occasion in so I when I left the army years later, I was consulting as a security advisor.
Yeah, yeah,
So if a media crew wanted to go to an area of conflict or a war zone, I'd go with them as an advisor
yeah,
and work with the local nationals on the ground and facilitate whatever they needed to do. And on one of the jobs, we went to Mosul, and it was when the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga fighters they took Mosul back from ISIS after 2014. As you know, ISIS
yeah, yeah,
walked through Mosul pretty much unchallenged and declared it the caliphate, part of the caliphate. And we were on the front line with the Peshmerga. I mean, we were literally one bound behind ISIS when they were clearing the buildings, and there was a V bid that charged at the front line at a distance, and all the Peshmerga and the Iraqi Golden Division, their special forces, they're firing at this vehicle, and it detonates. So I hit the deck behind the bunker. The loudest explosion you can imaginable, and it's only when I sort of come round that I look to the camera tripod that I'm taking cover next to, and there's a hot, smouldering piece of twisted metal in it,
oh,
and
shit.
it embedded into the leg of the tripod,
Yeah.
which was next to where I was lying. And it just the gods that be just decided it wasn't my day that day.
That's mad. There's a there's so many people with stories like that. That are like, fucking how lucky are you? Like
Yeah, it's
it
crazy.
it's mad, mate. It really is. And especially with the force that you were obviously with the Paras, because you guys went through a lot of shit in obviously every sort of major conflict since. It's like send the Paras in, they'll deal with it, and it's like fucking hell. It's,
Well, it was a strange one because I know the history is relatively short in comparison to a lot of cap badges,
yeah,
but when I joined in the early noughties, there weren't there was a few Falkland vets left in battalion,
yeah,
and there were pockets of um, activity in Northern Ireland,
yeah,
targeted IDs and stuff, which were horrendous. But in terms of conventional war fighting and actually getting the rounds down at an enemy, there weren't that many in battalion that had experienced that.
yeah,
There had been a small contingent that had gone to Sierra Leone. Um, some of the blokes had witnessed some horrendous stuff in former Yugoslavia and places like that. But in terms of actually war fighting, there wasn't many left. And so when Herrick came about in 2006 into Helmand, you almost in the space of 6 months, you had 18-year-old, 19-year-old war fighters,
yeah, yeah,
that had done everything that they signed up to do, and not for better or for worse. But it's, I mean, our generation, mate, our generation, it goes in cycles, I think. But we
yeah,
we are a
definitely,
generation of warfighters
yeah,
with the Iraq and Afghan campaigns, and that was part of the reason for me writing the book because as we know, us veterans, I'm certainly very passionate about military history,
yeah,
UK military history, but to your average sort of Joe public, in 20 years' time, the Iraq and the Afghan campaigns, they're not going to be spoken about as much.
yeah.
And
You could say
they
very similar.
deserve to be.
You could say very similar to Northern Ireland and the Falklands as well. That
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly
quite,
that.
I say quite lucky. He does my fucking head in. One of my buddies, who I served with, who actually lives around the corner from me. I say loves. Yeah, he does. He loves the Falklands War. He loves everything
Yeah.
about it. Every second minute, he's like, "Have you seen this fucking documentary? They need to do a fucking TV show on this, or like a adaptation, a bit like Band of Brothers, but for the fucking Paras and the Marines that were in fucking
Yeah.
in the Falklands." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, mate." And he's like, "Yeah, read this book." I'm like, "Mate, chill out. Are you going to get a Falklands bet on?" I was like, "I already have." We didn't really talk much about the Falklands, and that was fucking Rusty Furman from fucking. He was talking to me about the balcony and the embassy
Yeah.
siege. Um, but yeah, you're
Yeah.
right,
What?
and I find it's fascinating on Remembrance Weekend when they have the Festival of Remembrance on BBC, and you see, and they I'm pretty sure they choose, don't they, like a conflict that they sort of talk about a bit more for that time. I think the other
Yeah.
year was the Korea War, which nobody fucking talks about, as they call it, the Forgotten War. And I think the Falklands is becoming another one that's a bit of a forgotten war. It's
Yeah.
quite difficult to forget Northern Ireland considering it's on our fucking doorstep. Um, but yeah, Iraq and the first Gulf War, not many people speak about that. Um, and then Iraq and Afghanistan will probably go in the same way as you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think it's important for platforms like this and the veteran community. We keep sort of banging the drum, so to speak, and speaking about the young lads that sacrificed everything there, regardless of political opinions and
Yeah,
ideologies. The young 18, 19, 20-year-old lads. So yeah, like I said, that's why I thought it was important to get it down in black and white in writing so that 20, 30 years time, I intend to pass the book down to my grandkids and
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
their kids, and those stories will be there for people to learn
How,
about if
how
they
did you
want to.
find writing it?
It challenging, mate, really challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to use a ghostwriter. I wanted it for, even if it was even if it was terrible,
Mm.
I wanted it to be my own writing. But I started it. I never had any intention of writing a book. I started it in so got back from HR4 in end of '06, and then my kind of world started to spiral drastically out of control. Similar to what you were saying. Just I didn't want to sleep because of the horrendous
Mm.
nightmares that I'd have. I didn't want to be awake. I felt dead inside. I felt emotionally numb, and I didn't know whether I wanted to be alive anymore. I just couldn't shake that feeling, and it basically all came to a head in an attempted suicide, a suicide attempt. And my wife at the time, she basically, I was still in the military just, and she got me in touch with the medical officer, and I seen a psychologist for about 6 months. And part of the treatment, he said to me, because I said to him, "There's so much stuff that happened. I can't even remember some of it."
Yeah.
And he said the brain has a fascinating way of acting like a coping mechanism, and it's almost a form of psychological amnesia where you'll just forget stuff, or events will blend into one. And he said, just write it down. He said, write down in chronological order. Don't worry about the quality of the writing. Don't worry about spelling. Just write down, recall on paper your memory of everything. And I did that. It helped massively. And as I started to do it, more memories started to pop in, and
Yeah, yeah.
and it was definitely challenging getting them down. And by the end of it, I had probably nearly 10,000 words of a bit of childhood stuff, and
Mm.
predominantly Afghan. And I did nothing with it, mate. Did nothing with it. It sat on a hard drive for years. And I always liked the idea of publishing a book, but I didn't have a clue where to
Yeah, yeah.
start. And then two things happened. Well, three things. So, two good friends of mine killed themselves as a direct result of their military service. Because of the
Yeah.
demons got the better of them, and we see it far too often now, as I'm sure
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
feel the same. That happened, and then in 2017, I had organ failure. So I got diagnosed with a rare kidney disease when I come back from Afghan, and they basically said, we don't know what's caused it, uh, but it's incurable, and eventually your kidneys will fail, but we don't know how long that'll last. So
Wow.
for over a decade, they basically managed it. They managed the symptoms, and that was really high blood pressure and swelling of my legs and hands. But I still was able to work and
Yeah.
do everything that I wanted to do. And then, yeah, 2017, my organs failed. My kidneys failed, and I rushed into hospital on death's door. And um, they were putting all sorts of tubes into my groin, into my neck, into the artery in my heart to keep me alive. It was a miracle how I was still alive with the
Yeah,
amount of
yeah.
toxins in my blood.
So,
So
another one of your lives, mate.
I remember. I know, yeah, yeah, another one marked off. But I remember thinking then, if I actually survive this, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna publish that book. And yeah, came out of that. I was donated a kidney, and I knuckled down and got the book written in it probably took about 18 months.
Yeah.
And I would write a draft, and then I'd go back again and again and again and add to it and change it. And I used an editor just to
Yeah, it helps tidy it
proofread it
up.
for me,
Yeah, yeah.
for spelling and grammar,
Yeah, yeah.
because I didn't finish school, and I'm used to writing with crayons, obviously being
If you don't eat
from
them.
Paris.
Oh, that's the Marines, isn't it? That's the Marines that eat the crayons.
Yeah, I know, but the raspberry ones are just so tasty. But so yeah, published it, mate, on Amazon, and it took me by surprise how well it's done, and how many of the guys that I serve with have reached out to me, and a lot of the stories have resonated with them in some way,
Yeah.
because trauma is trauma, whether it's
Yeah, of course.
childhood, whether it's a car accident, a bereavement, whatever it is, trauma is trauma. And I think what's unique with trauma is that you and I could go through a traumatic experience,
And
and
they'll see
our
it completely different.
interpretation of it
Yeah, yeah.
would be completely different. So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I
yeah,
tried to explain to so many people that were obviously, as I said from the start, that were giving me shit. They were like,
yeah,
how can you be like that? And I'm like, well, because I'm built differently to what you are. And my brain clearly hasn't allowed me to process certain things that have happened, whether they're minimal or not minimal, and whether that's stuff that's happened when I was growing up or stuff that well, not that I saw any major things out on the ground. There's a few incidences that did stick with me and I really shit me up. But there was a few things that happened while I was in the command center on the radio. I was the lead signaler for the squadron, so every major incident that happened to 15 Squadron in Op Herrick 17, I dealt with, and that's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure when you're hearing things that are happening to your mates and you can't do anything apart from speak to the air desk and maybe we can get some fast air in or something. Um, but people didn't seem to understand that. They were like, you would. I've had that. I've still got the messages. I'll send them to you at some point. There was one that I never even served with him. I was never on squadron with him. Didn't even know him. And he sent me a message saying, "Oh, I was a disgrace to the regiment." And I was like, "Okay, where's this going?" And then it was you sat in the sea jock, to which I just replied, "On which tour are you talking about?" Because I did 3 tours, and a lot of people assume that I did the same job at every tour, where I was a rifleman and a signaler in Basra and Kandahar before I sat in what I call the hot seat, which is Granite Zero. Um, and it was like the most stress I had was in the command center because not only have I got to deal with the lads on the ground and keep them, well, you could say happy and sometimes full of morale, and sometimes I got to just make sure everything's okay and they know that all the messages are being passed to the relevant areas. I've also got the watchkeeper behind me who's breathing down my neck, making sure that everything is fucking going out when he asks, how he asks, etc. But not only that, you've got the whole force protection wing that are next to me. That if there is a rocket attack or a contact ID, even if it's not even to do with us, I'm in fucking Bastion Command Center. We deal with every fucking thing. So I get the fucking force protection wing coming through. What's going on? I'm fucking can you fuck off and take your barcode somewhere
yeah,
else? It was fucking horrible. But the one that always stuck in my mind, and a buddy of mine was in the lead vehicle next to me, or to say next to me, behind me. I was doing up Barmer. I was one of the guys on the Valen doing up Barmer, and I got a reading. So I've gone down to confirm on an IED, to which the Barmer commander, who is no longer with us, unfortunately, um, thought it'd be a good idea to pull the wire that was hanging out of what I thought was an IED right in front of me, because he thought that's definitely not an IED. Where I've confirmed it's beeped and everything, I've gone down to properly confirm on it. To which he's pulled the wire out of the fucking ground. And as soon as he put his hand on that wire and pulled it, I thought I'm fucking dead, because it was literally from where I am to my MacBook was where I've confirmed, and he's pulled the fucking wire. And even my buddy, he was the driver of the lead vehicle. He was even in the footwell himself, and I was
Right.
I was shaken up for oh, ages with that. I was like, I could have fucking gone there, and it wasn't even my. I did everything right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's often the case, isn't it? You've done everything you should do. And I think sometimes because I have it all the time. I've this there's always going to be someone that's done more tours
Yeah,
and more shit and whatever, but your story and your experiences are unique to you,
yeah, of course they
and
are.
we're not here saying this we're the ultimate soldier,
Yeah,
not by any means. It's more that these are our experiences and this is what we've
yeah,
learned, and they're unique to us. They're not special. They're just unique. They're
yeah. Totally
unique.
agree.
That's
And
it to us.
I think, uh, as you said, it helped with you decanting. Oh, there's a good fucking word like that. Decanting your different experiences and traumas and things like that that you were struggling with to put it onto paper. So many more veterans, whether it gets published or whether it doesn't get published, write in a diary or anything like that. Um, it fucking helps. It took me ages to get my words onto paper because I'm fucking super dyslexic and I find it difficult to write down exactly what's going. My head goes too quick for my fucking hands, so it all comes out as gibberish. Excuse me. But if I sit and wait and write
Yeah.
without it helps. Um, but I found that the podcast helped more because I'm better at speaking than I am at writing. Um,
Right.
but while I went out, my first tour Iraq, and I remember, funnily enough, reading Jarhead, and I was like, what a brilliant idea that is to write diaries and journals while you're out there, so that maybe one day you can be with your grandchildren or whatever, and you go, oh, have a read of that. That was what it was like while I was out in the desert for a few months. And I kept hold of them,
Yeah.
and it was Iraq, Kandahar, and then Bastion. I wrote, I could say daily, anything that really took place. Most of the time, it was me gobbing off, going, "These fucking dickheads." And funny enough, one of them was, I, I served with him, and he was a proper gobshite. He was always gobbing off, or he was falling asleep on stag, and he wanted to be a para. He wanted to be a para, but he was in the RAF Reg. He was going to transfer over. And I remember writing in it, and I was going, he keeps falling off on stag. He thinks he's Gucci. He thinks he's fucking Ali. And if he thinks he's going to be a power, he's got another fucking thing coming because he's fucking dog shit. And I was writing all that sort of stuff down. Fast forward about 3 years later, he did eventually do P Company, and he transferred over and was a fully fledged super
Yeah.
hat. Um, but yeah, now fair play to him. Like, I never saw it coming. I never saw it coming, but he did do it. Fair play to him.
Yeah. I think journaling and writing, even if it's shit,
Yeah.
it's I think more veterans, well, and anybody, but especially veterans, especially someone that's gone through trauma,
Oh, I agree.
it's not given the credit it deserves,
Yeah.
because to even if you don't, if nobody sees it, to think of about to think about what happened, think about the emotions, and then to put it down in writing, so you've got to organize your thoughts. it gave me some like control over the narrative.
Yeah.
I think it's a really powerful
Yeah,
thing.
it was as though you were controlling the trauma and the trauma wasn't controlling you, you
Mm,
could say.
yeah,
Because I found it with starting the podcast. When I first started, it was literally just me talking to myself, basically. Um, but it was that well, it started us off for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then it progressively got more. I started talking about random things then, but it was having that set time during the week where it was though this is my sort of online journal that fucking anybody can listen to if they want to. Then I started
yeah,
getting guests on, and we were talking about their experiences, what they do, and it then started becoming a bit like my own sort of therapy. I don't even have to talk about what's bothering me, but having another person, because it really took hold getting people on to talk to during COVID, um, especially like this, which is a brilliant format, I think, via Zoom. But it really helped because I was like, I've got other people to talk to now, and it's not just via text. I can see them. It's not quite human contact. I have had a few people in what is known as the shed, or was the shed. I'm now in a garage, upgraded. Yeah.
yeah,
That was loads better. We could it could literally probably be the worst episode ever for people to listen to. But I always felt fucking happy and sort of hyper when I finished. I'd go into my missus
yeah.
and she'd be like, "Oh, it was a good episode." And I'd be like, "Fuck, it was fucking brilliant." Who was it? And then I'd be like, "Oh, Andy Williams," and
The
she'd be like,
bull
"Who's
necked
that?"
sparrow.
Yeah, she'd be like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "It doesn't matter because it's fucking brilliant." And that's what it was for me. But yeah, very similar to you. When I eventually started typing out my journals into what is Granite Zero, the book, it did help a lot. But and as we said at the start, fuck me, was I nervous when I actually hit publish. I was like, oh shit, now people can actually read it and go, fucking hell, this
Yeah.
guy is super dyslexic. What? That doesn't even make sense.
Well, they're you know, some of your deepest and darkest experiences, and I have it now at work. I bump into people that have read the book that I've never met,
Yeah,
and they know everything. They pretty much know everything about your life,
yeah,
and there is a vulnerability to that because they know all the things in the book. But yeah, you've never met them. But it is it's a bold move to put it out there.
oh,
But
definitely.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad I
I,
did.
I had it at work. So when I became the manager, I needed to fill a few slots in my night team that I've got, and I was interviewing people. And one of the blokes, he's a fucking brilliant officer, really nice bloke as well. But he said that as soon as he saw like my name on my email that went back to him, he then Googled me, which I thought was a bit weird. But on the back of him Googling me, he then found the podcast and the book, and he bought and read the book just so he knew a bit more about me. And I was like, that's kind of creepy, but also pretty cool because thanks for giving me an extra £5 in my pocket. But no, it was a strange thing. He was like, oh yeah, I've read your book. And I was like, wow, thanks. Anything you want to know? Do you want me to sign it? Because famous and that. But
Yeah. Well, now you've done now you've done one. You're
yeah,
gonna have to do another.
yeah, the
You
update.
know.
Yeah, to be
Yeah.
fair,
I think.
I,
I,
I put quite a bit of the podcast in the book. There's a little bit of growing up. There's a little bit of my service. There's a little bit after when I did a bit of surveillance work and trying to transition into being a proper civvy. It took me ages. which is what predominantly the book was about, was my struggle with being a fucking civvy. Um, I've mentioned enough times on here before. I was always going to be a lifer in service, but family and the missus and the kids, they came
Yeah,
first. So, and as those that served in the Air Force, one of the important core values is service before self. And there was a moment where it was no longer service was first; it was family first. And when that happened, that was
yeah,
then, yeah, that's time for me to do the 7 clicks.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a commendable thing to do, mate, because you never know what the future had in store
Yeah,
for you had you not done
yeah,
that.
definitely.
And so many people in the military, maybe one of them, grew up without any parents, and I didn't want that for my
Mm.
son. And there was a point where I was working abroad after the military, and I was away the majority of the year. And there was a moment where I just realised that, Jesus, I'm turning into my dad here, and I didn't want that relationship with I
Yeah,
didn't want that to be our relationship with my son. And then that was when I decided that I'm going to go back in the UK and I'm going to make it work. No matter, I loved the
yeah, of
work I was doing, but no
course.
matter what, because I wanted to be there for my lad.
Yeah, no, that is spot on because I remember. So my eldest was born um, just before I went off to Camp Bastion on my final tour. But I remember being Mrs. being pregnant during Kandahar, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be when that little one's born. And then when she was born, I was like, oh, this changes everything. She's
Yeah,
changed everything. And if it was just me and the missus, I probably would probably say that we wouldn't be together if I stayed in. Um, because it's not fair. And I know it's slightly different now, but obviously during the time that I was serving, we were still deploying a lot. Um, I was as I've mentioned, I was there 5.5 years. I did 3 tours in that time, and a lot of people go, oh yeah, but that's you only did 4 months or whatever, or 6 or 7 months was my final tour. But it's like, yeah, but you forget in the build up to that, you do pre-deployment, which is half the year as well. So you do half the year getting ready to deploy, and then you deploy, and that's ranges where you'd be away for 3 weeks, and then you come back, and then you go to Sennybridge for a month or whatever it was,
mm.
and come back, and then you'd have maybe a week off. It's it's crazy. It was a crazy time.
Yeah, it's a strain. Yeah, it's a
Definitely
strain,
was.
but yeah, don't you get to check into hotels though, don't you, when you go away
Oh,
on
you're definitely in the
exercise?
Air Force, yeah.
Why dig in when you can check in? No, it's yeah, it's a strain, isn't it? It's going to be a strain on any relationship. It had the opposite effect for me. So I was married. I got married very early for all the wrong reasons, but it felt
Yeah,
like the right thing to do at the time. And when I left, because I was away so much, when I left, we actually realised that we're not actually compatible.
yeah, yeah.
um, and it was a very amicable break.
Oh, that's good.
But
Well,
yeah,
at least that's something.
when I was in,
That's something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You, yeah. You hear horror stories, don't you?
Oh yeah.
We'll all know blokes that have gone through the mill, with kids, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Oh, there's so many these days as well that I've seen on different social media platforms. There was one where one of the pad wives is split up with her husband, and then now the military are threatening to take away her accommodation with her kids. It's like, hang on a minute. Well, obviously, because you're not the one serving.
Yeah.
He is. It's, oh, don't get me started with that because they get entitled, don't they? Fucking hell. Oh, so being a Valleys man or a North Welshman, should I say?
Yeah, a druid.
A druid, is it? See, my mum's from Bargoed in the Valleys.
Ah,
Uh,
right, yeah.
so I love God's country. Are you a rugby man or a football man? Or neither?
Rugby.
Rugby.
Yeah, rugby.
So obviously
And
Gatlin's just been he's been let has he been let go or did he leave?
yeah, I think yeah,
Was
it
that
was
you
somewhere.
was that you want to leave before you get pushed?
Yeah, possibly. Uh, yeah. To be honest, when I was a lot younger, I followed it religiously, rugby union,
Mm.
but not so much now. I watch the internationals.
Yeah, that I'm very similar.
Um, I'm not enjoying them. Not enjoying them at the moment.
No,
You know,
well,
with the
because
Six Nations,
my
but
as I said, my mum's Welsh, so I've got split allegiances with England and Wales. Um, obviously
yeah,
England fantastic against France. They were pretty good against Ireland as well. Though. I think they were a bit unlucky in the second half, but
yeah,
I was bombarding my mum with texts um, in the first game against France for Wales to the point where she went, "Can you stop texting me now? I'm trying to watch it." And I was like, I was analysing everything. I was like, "There's something going on there in Welsh rugby because they haven't. I don't know if it's the development or what, but there's something missing. And one of the major things that I noticed, and I'm not saying I'm a fucking huge rugby analysis guy or anything like that. Their 12 and their 13 were not built in the way that an inside and outside centre should be built to break that line off the pass, off the 10. And they were very flat. And I was like, that's not how I've ever seen Wales ever play rugby. Even when they were at their worst, they were
yeah,
they always had a player that could smash into the line. I thought their number 10 was very arrogant and not good enough, in my opinion, to play for Wales in that position. He tried too many fancy kicks and all sorts, and it just wasn't good. But they
yeah.
even the forwards, it was like there's no meat. And the biggest thing that I took from it, then the national anthem. There was no passion when they were singing the national anthem. I was like, what is going on? That was one of the things that is
Yeah,
world
it's
renowned for the Welsh.
yeah,
The passion when they're
infamous. It's
singing. It just seems like there was no passion in that team. And I was like, that is something that the Welsh have always had is passion to play for their country. And yeah, it was just bizarre for me.
it, it's um it's a young team, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the experience is left. I'm hopeful that in the years to come, as they play more together and they mature as a
It will
team, that
as everything we've said, it all goes full circle at some point.
yeah,
That
yeah. I always played. So where I'm from in North Wales, it was split between you could go to a Welsh speaking school or an English speaking school, and you do Welsh as a second language. So I went to an English speaking school, but I played rugby for a very first language Welsh speaking side,
oh yeah.
and I was always a bit of an outcast because because Welsh wasn't my first language, but yeah, I've not played in years, but
I haven't. I'm
uh,
built like a rugby
yeah,
player now, but couldn't play it now.
but no, it's great. Well, where I live now, up near Manchester, it's all rugby league.
Oh, they do love it up north. They
There,
love the rugby league, don't they?
yeah, yeah, and it's not something I've ever really followed, or if it's on, I'll enjoy watching a game. But it's always been union for me. I think there's just
Yeah,
people say it's slower, don't they? But I just feel like there's more to the game. There's
yeah,
more to the game. There's more set pieces. There's more tactics involved. Personally,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I think.
I
Anyway.
totally agree. Totally agree. But Willow, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I could talk for hours, but I also need a piss. So but no, mate. Genuinely, thanks very much for giving me your time and coming on. It's been a great chat. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It's been really good, mate. It's been the format that you've got. It really works. It's nice and relaxed, like you said, just like you're in a pub.
Yeah, I've just
Maybe that's something to think about for the future.
yeah. I might have to
An in
turn this
person,
into a pub, maybe.
yeah.
Definitely.
Inundated with guests then.
Oh yeah, they'll be like, well, definitely coming in for a pint. I'm like, ah, cool.
Yeah,
Nah, but thanks very much, mate, and I'll be in touch, and I'll let you know when it's all being released. And I'll get
yeah.
the link. I'll get the link for your book, and I'll put it on the what's the name.
Cheers, Tommo.
Nice one,
Appreciate it,
brother.
mate.
You have a good evening.
All right, take care. Look after
All right, mate.
yourself.
Be careful, yeah. Cheers. Hello. You're at the adverts, so don't turn off. Don't turn off because I've got some good stuff for you. First up, I'm going to talk about our sponsors. Kent CBD is our first sponsor. Now, CBD oil, as you know, has tremendous benefits, especially within mental health and physical health. Personally, I use it to help with my anxiety and my depression, but not only that, I also use it to help with the aches and pains of life in my joints, especially my ankles and my knees. But yeah, without CBD oil, I would have still been on my antidepressant tablets, which I'm no longer on. So, every cloud. And what we're going to do here at Granite Zero is we're going to give you 10% off everything from oil, muscle rub, jellies, bath salts, the lot. Yeah? Make sure you get in there. www.kentcbd.org. Put in the promo code GRANITE0 and get yourself 10% off. You are welcome. But also, if you're like me and you love a nice cup of coffee. Now, for me, I only drink one coffee, and that's Green Beret coffee. Now, I don't only drink it because it's out of this world fucking coffee, roast to order, grinded to whatever specific grind you want. But not only that, it's veteran owned and veteran run, which, hits me right in the feels. So make sure you check it out, Green Beret Coffee. Get yourself a nice cup of coffee. I drink it dark, just like my soul. Incredible stuff, incredible stuff. And what I'm going to give for you, I'm going to give you 10% off. So once you get to the checkout, once you've got all your coffee, your products, your apparel, whatever you need, get to the checkout and put in the promo code GZPodcast10 and get yourself 10% off. Courtesy of the Granite Zero podcast. You are welcome. Now that's enough of me talking about this stuff. Back to the regular scheduled show. Check it out!